Touchdown, Chargers!
What's up, guys? Welcome into a brand new episode of Chargers Weekly at the Bolt. As always, joined by the voice of the Chargers, Matt Money Smith. The start of OTAs this week, Money. I know you were there on Tuesday. I was not.
Yeah.
Observations, my friend.
Well, I think there's a lot. One, start with just I think everybody saw the highlight, Ladd and Herbert, and that beautiful toss down the left sideline that he tapped to himself. That was fun to see. I thought Trey Harris, a couple of his targets. The new guys are always fun to kind of just put your eyes on them for the first time. Saw him catch a go ball. That was kind of cool. And then, the Justin Herbert to Mike Williams reunion was fun to watch as well. I don't want to leave anybody out and stuff, but, Q was catching everything that was thrown his way. But the one thing I think that probably stood out the most to me was just how big the running backs are. When you see them clustered together, and it's Najee and Hampton and Sanders and it's just, and Hassan, like, dude, these guys are all over 220 pounds. I mean, Najee's 240, Sanders is 230, and you see it. You're like, man, that's a big group of dudes. And then you see Mekhi Becton and Joe Alt standing next to each other, and it's like, that's a big couple dudes, and it just kind of lets you sort of imagine what this thing can look like, this year with some of the pieces they've added and how this team wants to play physical football. And that's just the nucleus of it. When you look at that group right there, like, okay, yeah, that should be able to play in the world of physical football.
Yeah, it's hard to really see a ton from OTAs, but the theme at the press conferences was the defense, right? Yeah. And you
secondary,
heard from Cam and Tarheeb and Coach Klink and Tony Jefferson. And the one thing that kind of struck me through the 45 minutes of press conferences was just Tarheeb and his growth from year one to year two. It seems like he's really kind of Coach Klink said he's just a different guy from the end of the season, and now it's end of May, working with Khalil Mack, being in the weight room every single day. It seems like Khalil has rubbed off on some of the young guys.
I mean, that's, it's why when we talked about the offseason and Joey and Khalil and money and how can you pay all these,
money.
It's clear that like Mac means, like what Mac means to this team, and like that was just such a cool story to illustrate it. Here's a guy that's not even been here for a year, that's in the weight room, and Khalil's like, why aren't you in here on Friday? And it's like, why don't you work out with me? And it's like that, you're talking about like I don't want to say a kid, he's in his 20s, but you know what I mean, like a second-year player, and now here's this future Hall of Famer and one of the greatest players of his era that's got his arm around you and is like, hey, man, let's go. And I think that, to what Coach Clinkscale was talking about, that rubs off, right? And that helps you become more of a professional. And like when he said Tarheeb's kind of turning into a leader in that room now, and it's like, yeah, that's sort of the Khalil Mack effect, and based on the way he played last year, makes sense. It's like, yeah, I mean, guy played his tail off, played great, had some huge moments in some big games, and obviously, feels like he's ready to do that based on how he played. So it's, I think the one thing I took away most from all those pressers was just how tough it's going to be for some of these guys, and by that I mean like to make the team. Like that is a competitive, deep room, and I know we've talked about this before with like blue chips versus depth, but just like the depth of that room, man, there's guys that are maybe not going to make the initial 53 that are going to get scooped up like that because of how deep that room is.
Yeah, and you got to make the team on special teams. And coming up, we have a great conversation with Ryan Ficken. You guys are not going to want to miss that. But it also goes back to just kind of having vets in the room that you can lean on. And Coach Klink talked about how Derwin James is the reason he gets up in the morning to coach a guy like that. To have Coach Herb in the weight room, Khalil, having a guy like Tony Jefferson around. I mean, Tony is the consummate pro, was out of the game for a year, talked about just kind of getting his body back in shape, but also being a scout/coach and being a resource for some of these guys in the secondary.
Yeah, Tony's the best, man. That was a really fun presser just to hear for those that didn't hear it, you should check it out. Just watch it in its entirety on thechargers.com. He's such a great guy, such a thoughtful person, and someone who's been around the game as long as he has. And, he talked about what Ben Herbert meant to him. And we heard this coming in, right? We heard that when Coach Harbaugh was hired, that he was adamant that Herb had to come with him. And, and you heard from J.J. Watt, and saying what Coach Herbert meant to him at the University of Wisconsin and how important he was. And then you hear Tony Jefferson say, man, I was out of football. I wasn't going to make this team. And now he's standing at the lectern talking about how I'm in a completely different headspace. Like, my body's different. I feel different. I'm a football player, And I think last year he's coming off a year of scouting and thinking about walking away from the game, and now he's like, dude, I got to figure out how to make this team. And because that's what he was talking about, how deep the room is and how competitive the room is. And to me, you think about what he meant and when he was called upon, how well he played in a couple of those games, not just the preseason game against Dallas, but in the regular season. And it's like, man, that just contributes to it, because you obviously have, when you draft, Mickens, now you've got Mickens, Molden, Gilman, Derwin. Now you're going to add, Tony to that mix. That's 5 in the safety room, man. And then you look at the corners and you sign Dante Jackson and St. Juste. And, of course, you have Cam, Tarheeb, and then you've got John, Dean Leonard. Like, man, that's a freaking tough nut to crack to try to make this 53.
But it speaks to Tony's perseverance, too, because he admitted he wasn't in shape in minicamp. He kind of worked himself into shape. That's why he played almost every snap in that Dallas game. And he had to wait his turn in the regular season, but sure enough, it came. So it's about kind of being ready for your moment and playing different positions. You're right. The pressure was great because he also said Jesse Minter's a genius, and I was put on to Jesse Minter before a lot of you guys were because of their time in Baltimore. So I do think that it's worth listening to every minute of that press conference.
I didn't even mention Bridges, by the way, for the corner room. Think about that. That's 7. That's 7 dudes, and it's a great thing. Like, I think about sort of where we've been in this particular moment going into a season, and just like, man, if this guy goes down, what are they, and now it's just like the depth on this team. You feel so good about, that room. And if somebody, God forbid, gets hurt, okay, let's, now you got this person to put in there, defensive line. It's like, yeah, you unfortunately lose Puna, but you draft Caldwell, you bring in Jones, you bring in Hand, you've got Tito, you bring back Tier. Like, there's just depth. And that's the other thing that kind of jumped out to me at OTAs is I was watching the tight end group, and I'm just like, man, look at these dudes. We're like watching Tyler Conklin just run seam routes and snatch. Herbert threw him a laser, and he just snatched it straight out of the air. There was, I know I'm rambling here, but Omarion had this just quick out, and he just had real good suddenness in his break. And as he turned around, that ball was on him, and just to see him snatch it and immediately get upfield, it's like, ooh, this looks different. This looks a little bit different this year with Conklin and Gadsden catching some of those balls and the way Hampton looked catching that ball. It's like, I think about what that was last year, just that particular group, and what it looks like now, man, and it's. Oof. Well,
a year ago, Money, we were excited about Hayden Hurst because he did look good in the offseason, and just injuries he had an injury-riddled season, was not able to be on the field, and Will Dissly was kind of put into situations that aren't necessarily his strengths, but he had a great year. But now you add Gadsden and Conklin to the Dissly room. It's going to look different. Year 1 to year 2, again. If you told us on May 30th last year that we'd be talking about Cam Hart and Tarheeb still the way we're talking about them right now as potential starters on a team that were they're 5th round picks last year. Cam Hart was great as well. He kind of had an injury riddled rookie year, but he showed the necessary flashes, and if he can play 17 games, then you got a really, really tough secondary.
Yeah, look, that's a big one, and there's a reason why he slipped to the 5th round, and that was it. He's a guy that dealt with injuries throughout his entire time at Notre Dame, and no one's doubting the talent. You see the size. I mean, my gosh, he's huge. For playing corner, you see how fearless he is and how aggressive he is, and what Coach Minter told us, he wants to do and what he'd prefer to do. I mean, Cam Hart fits right into that. So him staying healthy, and that was something Coach Cleanscales talked about as well, is, let's doing stuff off the field that you take care of your body to make sure, you can be available for 17. So, of course, nobody wants to get hurt, and you hope that there's a way that he can stay healthy, because if he can, he's a heck of a player, man. No doubt. So, yeah, I'm just trying to think of some other things I was watching, because I had a very great vantage point. I was up on the second floor balcony doing my radio show, so I had a chance to just kind of see everything from above, and I could just follow with my binoculars all the different groups, which was really fun to be able to do. Justin looks a lot bigger, for sure. You can kind of see it, the way he's kind of put together. And that was fun to watch him. I saw Jamari kind of working some of the drills with the pads and, getting low and coming out from underneath the tarp there. And you can see everything that we saw on film at Houston, and sort of the quick feet in Oregon as well. He's a big dude. So that was fun to see. And then, of course, the offensive line. That was kind of an that's the grade you give there is incomplete. Rashawn wasn't there. And it looked like they were doing some stuff with Zion on the side. So it was kind of hard to piece together how that thing's going to look outside of Mekhi and Joe on that right side.
Yeah, that's incomplete. I think Popper in his observations had Taylor and Jamar Sawyer as the starting five. You
had Sawyer left tackle and Branson Taylor as the left guard for a while. And it's I don't think that's what it's going to be. But
that won't be what we see
know.
in Brazil.
Yeah, exactly.
Last thing before we get to Coach Ficken is that, again, a year ago, it's very rare to see a strength coach get at the podium and talk for 25 minutes. Coach Herb is as advertised. We talked about him all year, and it's just every guy you talk to, from a young guy like Tarheeb to a grizzled vet like Tony, they swear by Coach Herb.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, it's important, but it's a cliche for a reason. The best ability is availability, and that's what he's tasked with. And it's very hard. It's a very hard job, considering how violent the game is, and that attrition is a very real part of it. But based on how the players, talk about him, it's a true advantage. I mean, it's a real win that this franchise has, maybe over some other organizations, because he's here, and he's here again for another year, and it's another year in his program. And you see the participation out here, and a lot of the guys saying, "Oh yeah, I was around here working out with Herb a lot in the off season." And I think that just speaks. You think about how many of these guys go home and they want to be with their trainers. Like Tony was saying, in his presser, he's like, "Yeah, my trainer told me to take some time off," and I was like, "I can't take. I
gotta go. I'm ready.
I gotta go. And he was talking about working here with Herb. So it's great to see, because I think that just builds more and more camaraderie and cohesiveness and guys being together. So for Khalil, instead of working out at home with his personal trainer, because he certainly has the money and he's been in it long enough to probably have his own guy, it's like, no, I'm gonna be here with Herb, and now I've got Tarheeb still under my shoulder, and I've got an opportunity to show this young man the way, and I think that just speaks to the culture that Coach Harbaugh has created with all these other coaches, that guys want to be around here. Well, I mean, look at it. Who doesn't want to be here? My gosh.
Imagine
where else are you going to go? You're going to go Planet Fit? And I shouldn't say that. This place is great.
Short.
I don't know who's paying the bill. So this place is great. I'll leave it there.
Imagine if you're Tarheeb and you say, "Hey, I'll see you on Monday," and Khalil says, "Why?
Yeah.
Why aren't you going to be here tomorrow?"
It's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday.
Tomorrow's Friday. Tarheeb, let's go.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea. Hey, we've had a blast talking to all these coaches, and we talked to Jesse Minter. You and Jaleel did a month ago. Joe Ortiz a couple of weeks ago. Coming up, a fantastic conversation with Special Teams Coordinator Ryan Ficken. All right, guys, as promised, Ryan Ficken joins us on Chargers Weekly. And Coach, appreciate your time. Always a pleasure. How has the opening week of OTAs been for you, man?
It's been great. I mean, it's just getting out on the grass with these guys, kind of getting a flow, and just being around everyone right now has been a lot of fun. And I just enjoy being out there with the coaching staff and the players, and just eager to continue to look forward to OTA number 3 tomorrow.
It feels like, with young players, you're the guy that's got to get these guys in here, get them rolling. So what's it like every year? You hear, oh, this guy could make the team on special teams, when you bring in all these undrafted free agents, all the draft picks, and what's your process in kind of getting them sort of acclimated to what you want them to do for special teams?
I think it's just getting everyone on the same page. First and foremost, give them the reality check that everyone here at this level, they got to play special teams. They got to find a way to increase their value in some form or fashion, whether it be a quarterback, and he's got to be a holder, to where it's D tackles, where they got to be on field goal block and some punt return stuff. They just got to find a way to increase their value in some form or fashion. But Again, starting at the very basics and starting with the foundation, who we are as a unit, what we want to be, what our goals are going to be for this upcoming year, and making sure that we set that foundation with what the roles are, so they can go ahead and help our team, be successful this year.
You kind of have that baseline. You talk about a guy like Mickens, who played a lot of special teams at Clemson, and then Keandre, who didn't play much special teams at Auburn. How do you go into an offseason, especially with rookies, knowing that some may have more experience on special teams than others, and get that player or players who don't have as much experience on special teams up to speed?
Yeah, it starts with meetings, with all that. Meeting with these guys. These guys have been great. I mean, they're coming up to our offices eager to learn more. So just in terms of the nuances of the rules with special teams, it's completely different than it was with college. And so just like, say, the kickoff return rule. So really getting a baseline and a foundation for these guys. And I'm assuming that they don't know anything about it, because they don't in terms of this type of rules that they're going to be in the speed of special teams. But these guys have been phenomenal. They are eager to learn. Kennard's been great, wanting to always meet. Mickens, all the young guys. Even you look at the Trey Harris and Omar and Hampton. They're really just how can we help this team be successful, and so that makes our job a little bit easier. That their eagerness and willingness to be able to do more, which we were very appreciative of.
What? I guess there's a lot of different ways you can answer this, but what goes into making a great special teams player? Because you've had some good ones. I think Nick Neiman, who just left, seemingly was always in the right spot at the right time. Like, what is it that goes into that makes these players, like a Matthew Slater, who year in and year out is at the top of, sort of the class of what are they doing differently than everybody else?
I think it's the willingness and them embracing the role. Understanding, hey, I'm not just a linebacker, or for Matthew Slater's spot, he was a football player. I mean, he was, I coached him at UCLA back when he was in college, and he was a track guy, and he could do anything and everything. He was on offense and defense, but just finding out what your role is and embracing that role and how we can help this team win. And I think that's what makes a great special teams, or a good special teams player, into a great one. Just that desire and effort and discipline to be great, at their role. And then obviously the physical traits, you like to have, the guys that have, some kind of dynamic trait, an elite trait, and then that's for us to go ahead and continue to build on those traits, put them in those positions to be successful, but then also continue to develop the other traits that we need to go ahead and make them a well-rounded player.
Coach, what I think is so cool about your career in the NFL is that you were in Minnesota for as long as you were, but you spanned 3 different coaching staffs, right? So you had Childress, Frazier, and Zimmer,
Mm-hmm.
and then Staley and Harbaugh here. You've been that constant, right? So these new administrations, they want you to stay a part of their culture and what they're doing. How do you balance kind of being authentically you, because obviously there's a reason why they want you, and kind of adapting to different coaching staffs and different styles of doing things?
I think it's like you hit it. I mean, you got to be yourself, first and foremost. You can't try and be someone else, and I also believe, always learning from these coaches. I mean, these coaches have been successful, at their trade, and it's very important that I learn and take something from each of them and try and better my game with that. But just to be able to make us a well-rounded special teams unit and a better team with that. But very appreciative of all the coaches, been able to learn under. It's been a blessing with that. And then you look at the current regime now, just the experience and how much success they have had, and being able to adjust and implement what they're trying to achieve too. And I think it's just being willing to want to learn and continue to improve.
This could be an incredibly dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Hey, in our meetings, there are no dumb questions.
Okay.
No.
This one may be. Is there one that's harder to teach than the others? Field goal, kick return, punt return. Is there one that needs to be specifically more technical?
I think there's a bunch of nuances with a lot of them. You could talk about from position specific with the specialist to the holder. I mean, other people just see the snap, the hold, the kick, and operation in 1.3 seconds. But there's a lot of details that those guys have to work daily, and that's why they're professionals, and they make it look seamless and easy out there. But I think it's more of the situations in terms of the phase of what makes them difficult in the game flow that you have to deal with. Because say field goal, you're dealing with different type of athletes, and that plays happening in 1.3 seconds, as opposed to punt return. is going to be a little bit, longer, obviously, from snap to punt to end of the play. But I would say, to answer your question, just going off of what the new rules are, kickoff return, learning that, because it's essentially, when I was on offense, it's like, say, hey guys, this is power right now, this is going to be a new run play here, and just teaching a completely different scheme, different techniques where you're learning on as you go and through experience. So I would say a kickoff return, to answer your question, but they all have their their little pieces that make it difficult and challenging, which I don't say difficult but challenging, which I really enjoy, that part of special teams.
For us, it's been a joy to get to know Cameron Dicker on and off the field. You've been around a lot of kickers. It just seems like when the stakes are the highest, he is the most calm. What's it like being in a room with Cameron Dicker, and what attributes does he have as a kicker that you think really separates him?
I think the biggest thing, obviously, he's talented. We can see that with his leg strength and his accuracy, but I think it's the mental part. He's always willing to work. He has zero ego. This guy attacks every day that he wants to get better, but he's a true professional, and I think he was a professional, way before he was actually a rookie, because he came in here so mature, understands his craft, knows, he's going to continue to improve. But I just love his mind makeup and the way he goes ahead and approaches the game. How, again, like I said, he doesn't have any ego in what he's out there. He's just trying to go ahead and help this team win by kicking those balls to the field goal post, and then obviously on kickoffs to help us with field position. But I learn it every day from this guy. I mean, the way he approaches the game, it's been a true blessing with that.
Do you have like an idea? Again, I feel like I'm asking the dumbest questions, but does each stadium, do you have a range? Like, hey, we're at Arrowhead, this is where I think his range is. Now we're at Ford Field, and now I think this is what is it like, and how much goes into all of that, kind of determining where you think the border is of where you're comfortable saying, yeah, coach, let's go ahead and try that field goal here?
No, that's a great question. A lot of that comes with situational football, where you are in the game, because I know Dicker could go ahead and make them from where we go ahead and send him out there, and he's going to attack it like, hey, this might be outside the range. He's going to attack it, and he's going to go ahead and put it through there. But it's all about this situation. If you're outdoors, obviously the wind, the type of wind, where it is in the game. If you attempt a long field goal and for whatever reason it doesn't go through, and you give enough field position. So I think the spread situation is going to depend on how far you challenge them. And those game-winning situations, obviously, you can go ahead and you got that adrenaline going, and you can go ahead and stress it a little bit more, stretch it some more. Indoors, obviously the flight, but he hits such a true ball, and he does a great job with his approach, and just have so much confidence in him, not only with myself but the organization, and so I think he makes our jobs a lot easier.
A special teams play can flip everything, and I go back to last year, Thursday night football against the Denver Broncos, right before the half, when seemingly everything was going the opposite way. That one moment, which we haven't ever really seen, happens. Take me through that moment for you, and just what that was like for your unit and the team in general, and how that kind of was a springboard to win that game.
First and foremost, I was more excited just because of it did help our team win a game, and it changed that momentum. And that's what we talk about. One of our core philosophies is, either be a momentum answer guy or a team, or making sure we do a great job creating momentum for our team. And in that phase right there, I think we did a great job creating momentum for our team, going into halftime and coming out in the second half in a completely different ball game. But that is our role. We're a one-play series, which we got to go ahead and do that. But in that situation, it's always those situations we got to make sure we always prepare for. We'll talk about in OTAs. We'll hit it. We'll do it in training camp, and then once the season hits, we cover it once a week, and then we make sure we walk through those situations once a week, because you could do it where it's every quarterly or once a year, like, oh, we already covered it. But the way our roster changes nowadays with practice squad and how you can elevate guys, you almost have to cover it every week with a walkthrough, because guys might play different positions, and just the nuances, the little intricacies of that rule. With it's a different kind of alignment with the kickoff, different with the kickoff return. The clock starts at a different time. It doesn't start, right when he catches it. So it has to be a perfect, situation in which, it occurs. So in that situation, to answer your question, was, it was a punt return in which, there's the amount of time on the clock in which if you go ahead and fair catch right there and you go ahead and go with the free kick, you got to make sure that clock expires on the free kick, so they don't have an opportunity right there. So I just take my hats off to all of our players because they were dialed in, they were ready to go. Doesn't matter how much you go ahead and talk about it, but they accepted the challenge, they knew about it. So all my hats off to those guys and going out and executing. Starting with the punt return part where Dede fair catching it, and I know he got the penalty. However, if he doesn't fair catch that ball, or if he tries to return it, that situation does not occur. So him having an awareness, that was going to be a fair catch situation. To then our guys going out there and getting a line correctly for the kickoff, and just the nuances where you're bringing J.K. Scott out there as the holder, which now you don't have a holder on kickoff anymore because of, everyone's at the 40-yard line. The holder will be the actual punter as a 12th guy, but in that situation, he's coming out there, and now you got to bump the number 2 and number 3 outside the number. So a lot of different rules, but if those guys didn't go ahead and take full responsibility and accountability throughout the weeks and the meetings when we cover those, and wouldn't have been able to be successful because the guy would have been misaligned, and then we would have been like, oh, what if? So I'm just happy for those guys to
awesome.
help our team win. But what I love, though, the most thing out of anything, I mean, we got the W, but coach was fired up. He made sweatshirts for the whole, all the guys that were on the field, and the cartoon figures. So that was pretty cool. That was really cool.
You mentioned J.K. Long time ago. I'm not going to say names or years or anything, but there were some complaints about the holder, that was maybe an issue. What goes in, and how hard is it to be a good holder, and what kind of work does JK put in to do that? Because it certainly seems like that whole operation is just dialed.
No, they do. I mean, we got 3 great guys, veteran guys that, but they attack every day, where they want to get better, and they want each other to have success too. So that's what I love about these 3 is, Josh, obviously it starts with Josh as being our leader for not just our specialists, but he's the leader for our core special teams unit. And so it starts with him, and but they all want success for Dicker. They all want success for JK when he's punting, and then all 3 of them, or those 2, the punter kicker, definitely want success for Josh as well. So that's what I love about them. But going with the holding, I mean, there's a lot of intricacies to it, in which JK does a great job. He works at it. Him and Dick are always working, together to making sure they go ahead and fine tune everything. And depending on the wind, the tilt, they're always over communicating with one another. How they like it. And I think JK is a really good holder, and he's been great. And that's part of his value. He's not just a punter, but you switch out punters, then you also got to switch out holders, and you change that whole dynamic of everything. And there's some growing pains with some of that stuff, but that's why he has such tremendous value for this organization. Not because he can hit a 5-6 punt, but also because he's a really good holder as well.
Money alluded to this at the beginning. Just during the off season and training camp, man, you're one of the most important coaches in this building because all these guys are trying to make the team on special teams. When you have so many players probably knocking on your door trying to figure out how they can make the team, how does your job and your role in the off season change versus the regular season? It seems like you're going to have so many guys that you have to talk to in the off season about potentially making the team versus then you finally get the squad on the field.
Yeah, I think it's first and foremost is making sure we lay that foundation and understand what their expectations are, how they're going to help our team win football games, and that's the biggest goal, and everything, and just making sure that we put them in situations to be successful. So we want to make sure that we carve out that time to meet with these guys. They come up, we'll have a meeting here coming up here with a bunch of guys that just want to get some extra work and just watch tape and just and a lot of times when it's outside of the hours, you have accountability within the organization. Those leaders like Josh Harris, Alohi Gilman, like there was Nick Neiman and Troy Dye, where they'll run those meetings together, so they're all on the same page. So it's about creating that foundation first and foremost. And right now we are laying that foundation, which we got to make sure we do a great job with. And that starts with, obviously us as the coaches, but the players. But and then we got to build off that once we get into training camp. If we can't be great at something, there's no way we're going to go ahead and advance to like 2.0 and 3.0 in terms of what we're trying to do. So we got to make sure we're great at something so we can hang our hat on it and then continue to build as we go ahead and put this thing together.
How does it work with you and the rest of the coaching staff when it comes to a player that might be elevated to a starter and is going to be getting more? I think about Thule and where he may end up, and watching an OTAs the other day, saw him out there with you. But what is that conversation like, and what special team snaps might take out of somebody that may be elevated to playing more snaps on either offense or defense, and how that affects you and your squad?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because it affects in different kind of ways too, and obviously with, say, injuries. But, first and foremost is we want to make sure we go ahead and develop these guys where we want them to become starters, on offense, defense. And like, I give a case in point where we had Adam Thielen. He was a tryout guy back in Minnesota. He wasn't drafted. He was not a free agent signee. He came in a rookie minicamp and tried out. And he stuck around on special teams. He created his value on special teams first and foremost. He developed, he got better as a wide receiver, allowed him and gave him some time to continue to work his craft as a wide receiver. And then once he got those opportunities as a wide receiver, because special teams kind of gave him that time to go ahead and get to that spot, he took off, and we know what he is as a wide receiver. I mean, he was running the punt team, blocking field goals and punts, on special teams. And then now he's just an elite receiver, and he knows he'll tell you, like, I would always have him talk to our special teams unit, especially the young guys, hey, here's a guy that, was in those seats and learned. And so, that's the big thing in terms of, developing, I think, with those guys as we, work through and put these guys together. But to answer your question in terms of, like, the starters, we got to be able to adapt, because once they get to the starter, and that's like, all right, might take something off your plate, maybe almost everything, the roles change. And now these younger guys, they've seen him do it. They've seen how great of a job he's done it. Now it's time for those guys to take over, and that's part of the foundation of having. And I know I get long-winded on this one, but say like injuries, say a running back goes down, unfortunately, knock on wood, someone goes down, and it's not like the running back room, like, all right, the next running back's up, we'll go, next guy, he's up, he's going, all right? So with us, that's going to change about 4 different depth charts, and there might be now a linebacker fulfills his role on punt, and maybe a safety fulfills his role on kickoff. So different position groups that are all interchangeable, but at the end of the day, it's all 11 guys collectively. What do we got to do to go ahead and get the job done? And all my hat's all off for these players, because they embrace that and they do a great job.
Mentioned the coaches that you worked for, but you also said you learned from guys like Cameron Dicker, and you just mentioned Adam Thielen. Now you worked with Adrian Peterson early in your career. Who are some of the players that have really had an indelible impact on your career that you've taken stuff from that you can really apply to some of the guys here? Yeah,
I mean, I'll say one that comes off my mind right now is Marcus Sherrills as a punt returner. I have worked with him extensively when him being a punt returner. He's the leading punt returner in Viking history right now, and he was a tryout as well. Was never drafted, but just talking about mechanics, what he sees to say a Cordero Patterson, the way he returns, to Randy Moss when I was working with wide receivers, and the way he approached the game, the way he studied the game, how he could talk about offense and defense of the opponent, and just his knowledge of the game was unbelievable. But the Adrian Peterson's, the explosiveness, but there'll be guys where I'll put where I'll learn, like a Terrence Newman on punt return. He was playing corner for us, and there was this little step that made sense to me, and we called it the Terrence Newman step, right? Just a quick little 6-inch step inside right there, just to go ahead and, just making sure we slow down the tempo. And right then and there, I was like, all right, it's not my board. It's the Terrence Newman step now. And so that kind of carries weight, though, then with these other guys, with the young guys, like, well, now I got to kind of say, like, hey, maybe they don't know some of these guys now. But anyways, right. They're like, hey, yeah, Terrence Newman, he's a Hall of Famer. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
Late in his career to the
Vikings,
right?
And just something, if we can learn from these guys, because they've been in those positions, they've learned, and I would be naive and ignorant if I didn't learn from them. I don't think I'll be doing the players, the satisfaction to go ahead and improve them, because I think that's my job as well as, make sure we put them in those positions to be successful. But, we can go ahead and help. Hey, if that works for you, let's see how it might be able to work for other people too. So.
We saw a lot more returns last year, but I think in my opinion, I felt like we saw a lot more touchbacks than I thought we were going to, with it being at the 30. Just with the new kickoff, with the dynamic kickoff, how you assess giving a team the ball at the 30 versus trying to drop that thing right in there to be returned, and plus landing it in the landing zone. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it of how you determine you want to attack that. Has that changed at all from last year to this year, with them now tweaking the rules even further?
Absolutely. And I think you could see the change in the way people attacked it, and the philosophy changed midway through the year last year. Just the way they would approach the game and situations of it. The drive start being almost average on the 30, and when you include the touchbacks and if that as well. But You know, I know it was slightly lower than the 30 when you actually challenged them on the kickoffs, but they also had the risk in terms of the big returns, and that's for anything and everything. But I think this rule is great for the game. I think it's great for the players as well. The fans, it's more exciting now. You'll be able to see these guys play, and then these players get to have the opportunity to go ahead and cover kicks or make plays on kickoff return, and you see that their value be like a Nick Neiman. You know, he had great value, had a nice contract, you know, coming out of here, and I was very happy for him. So you like to you root for those guys in those situations, as opposed to, well, if it's just touchbacks and it's kind of a dead play. So I think it's exciting for the NFL, you know, as we go ahead and approach it. And yeah, I think there's definitely going to have to be philosophy changes in terms of, you know, going into this year, because of the drive start now being the 35 on a touchback. And so, yeah, you're going to put more balls in play and more challenging kicks that you may have. So, you know, Dicker being able to do the things that he can do, you know, by spraying the ball around and different types of kicks, increases his value, increases the coverage guy's value. It's going to increase the third running back's value in terms of, you know, play time, the more tackles they get, the returners. So I think it's great for the game, and, you know, it'll be exciting.
You know, we mentioned guys coming and going. You know, Nick Neiman's not here, but you bring a guy like Phillips. Troy Dye's back. How excited are you to get some of the existing guys back and then add some vets to the mix?
No, I think it's great. You know, and I appreciate, and it's not just me, I think our organization appreciates the way, you know, Joe Ortiz and his staff assembles this roster along with, you know, Coach Harbaugh. I mean, they do a great job because they have a vision, and they're, you know, always, you know, eager to listen, but they got a great vision in terms of how they're building this roster, and you know, so that's exciting, and to find guys to come in and compete, and that's what Coach's vision is it's all about competition. You know, competitors are welcome, and so I think that's great. Just trying to bring in the top guys. Doesn't matter if you're a 7-year vet, if you're a 3-year vet, or a rookie. They're going to bring in guys to go ahead and compete for the jobs, and you know, we're definitely blessed to go ahead and get a Del'Shawn Phillips in here. Just what he brings to the table with his athleticism, his length, and then his experience, like you mentioned before. You know, things we can take from him that he's been at different places. Like, all right, what worked for you? All right, that might work for you know, another guy on our roster, young guy. Let's go ahead and see if we can implement some of this stuff. And Troy's leadership. You know, I was with him in Minnesota, and I've always been a fan of him. Just the way he plays the game, the way he approaches it, practices. He practices, you know, full throttle every play. And so I knew when he was first available coming out of Minnesota, I was like, we got to go after this guy. Just the way his makeup is, and I was like, he's right. You know, exactly what Coach is looking for. And then we, you know, signing another guy, you know, Maga. You're talking about that linebacker room, that Del'Shawn Phillips, Maga. You know, I mean, we're excited about that piece that he brings, the physicality, the athleticism that he brings. But to answer your question in terms of Nick Neiman, I mean, it's never easy to replace one specific guy, you know, and that's why everyone else got to pick up the torch and go ahead and make sure we collectively we pick up, you know, the missed pieces. And I think this roster that we have and what Coach has built with Joe, it's exciting. I can't wait to go ahead and get to some of the games.
With the new onside kick, and just kind of, well, it's new in multiple ways, right? Since when you were doing it, where you can't overload the one side, and we've seen the lack of success with it. But would love to know your take on what we grew up watching on onside kick, which is, you know, pound it, get that second bounce, to now I think we see kind of Youngway do it in Atlanta a lot, where you're kind of putting that thing on the ground and trying to spin it. Have you noticed, like, it's weird to think of developments and onside kicks, you know, as the game has progressed, but is there a way that you think is more effective, or is it just a really hard play to execute because of how the NFL has this thing laid out now?
You know, I think what is real important, the way the NFL has it, you know, mapped out, is obviously player safety, which I think is very, very important. And so I get back, I support that 1,000%. And in regards to that play, yeah, the success rate isn't high, you know, but also this, you know, the team that you're trying to reward with the onside kicks is losing too. Right. So, you know, so I think the play will get better. We did a slight rule change, you know, with that, in which we're going to move them up a yard. And so, again, another rule change with it, but they're going to be towing that 35-yard line to be able to get a little bit closer to the ball. But yeah, I mean, these kickers, they can do a lot of great things in terms of the spinning, like you're talking about. And, you know, Denver did that to us a couple times, you know, last year. And it's a timing, but how can you go ahead and attack, you know, a weakness that you might see on tape or by our opponent? You know, are they overloaded on a certain side, a type of ball, personnel, where they are. All that factors in terms of how you can go ahead and get some of those recoveries. And, we had a couple close ones, like, against Kansas City, I think it was 22, and, ball was free. It's just didn't have enough guys right there to go ahead and get it. But it's just those opportunities where you get it free to have guys, buy that ball to make the play. And, that's all we're trying to do. And I think they're, hopefully not on our watch is not more recoveries, maybe
Right.
when we're on the onside, but hopefully we have more hands teams than anything that us trying to kick those onsides to go ahead and give us another play. But, it's just also the hands team doing a great job defending against it too. So
You coach in every NFL stadium, but week one in Brazil, it's a different animal. What do you know about that stadium, the grass? And I'm sure that you're already looking ahead.
Well, I will say that, and maybe this is still, this is a lot of full disclosure here, and I might be saying this up too much, but it's been, I want to say 20 years since I've been to Brazil. I've been to actually Sao Paulo, Brazil, coming out of college. Some friends, we took a trip down there.
Nice.
So, so I'll have to go ahead and brush up on my Portuguese. I'm not very good with that. But anyways, as the game, I think it's great for the NFL and what they're trying to do, and just broaden this and make it a worldwide sport, because it is. I think it's the best game in the world in all sports, and that maybe I'm biased, but I think it's an unbelievable game and so much parity amongst the talent level. But to be in such an amazing country, and my wife, she's Colombian, South American down there, and so just being in that country will be amazing, especially bringing it to the fans down there. I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm very very blessed to be able to and fortunate to be able to go down there for week one. I've been to London twice. So going there, it's going to be a lot of fun. The travel will be, different. So I know the sleep and all that, making sure, and they got this dialed in terms of when to sleep, when not to sleep, so we can go ahead and get on that time zone quickly. And, just excited to get there. But it'll be there soon enough, but it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, since you've already been there, I'm going to put you in charge of, hey guys, why don't we go down a couple days early? Let's maybe get down there 4 or 5 days early, just to make sure we get settled and we get used to it.
advanced
And I won't be like
scouting.
this. We're going to stay in that hotel, because it'll be fun just to be down there and
Yep.
just see
Business
the city. Absolutely, because we're going down there to do one thing, and that's to win that football game. And it will be a great start to the season, and just to go ahead and get that trajectory going. Something we're excited about.
Last one for me, I just got to ask. It's one, watching the highlights from what he was doing at Iowa State, but then two, seeing Coach Harbaugh, just the way he says Steve-O Klotz, just the name.
Yeah.
And I think back to Derek Watt when he was here. What a great, fullback. That's a great special teams player. Kind of your initial impressions of Steve-O Klotz and what he might be able to do for you.
I think the best for him is still in front of us about what he's going to bring, and that's the physicality, because he is a hammerhead in terms of he is a physical, and we can't obviously have pads on right now. So, watching him at Iowa State, there was a coach that kind of put me on him early in the kind of evaluation process for the draft, and he was a 4-core guy. And they, I know they're talking about Porter and all them, which are elite special teams players as well, and in respect to their position. But I think the one thing that he brought is they're like, this guy was the captain, and he kind of drove it. He set the tone, the tone setter for everything they do. And I was like, like to go ahead and get more of those guys, and excited about that, and felt that what he brings, he's going to go ahead and just mesh right in with our guys. And so he's doing everything right out there, the technique, the fundamentals, the mental part, learning from these guys, coming in and wanting to meet extra. But I'm looking forward to seeing them in training camp, preseason games, where you get to see that physicality part take over, and that's where I think he's going to go ahead and really flourish.
Coach, last one for me and for us. 11 wins last year, year 2 with Coach Harbaugh. What was year 1 like? Just meshing with a new coaching staff, and then how different is this year versus this time last year?
I think, with Coach Harbaugh, it is a true blessing to be around him and just watch the way he works, because he's a mastermind in what he does, and everything is so well thought of. He's not just thinking, all right, let's go ahead and this sounds good for today. I mean, he's thought through this, several times. I mean, he's, with the schedule changes, and he wants what's best for the players in the organization, but what is it going to give us that edge? And that's how he sees everything and everything we do. And when you have a coach like that, and who's had success, it's difficult not to go ahead and gravitate and just fall right in line, and just try and do your best so you can see him have success as well and see this organization have success. So I think it's, I'm learning a lot every day. The way he goes, approaches the team, the way he approaches each player individually. I think I'm the lucky one in terms of being able to learn all that and being able to take a bunch of nuggets from him and the way he tries to set up the foundation for the team on what he wants, and then just see that thing take off. For the difference in terms of what it was last year and this year, I think I won't say more comfortable. It's more we know what to expect. Not coming from Michigan with him being here, for year one is like, all right, this is how he likes to practice and everything, and now having an understanding of that, I feel we can continue to give more and continue to do more, and just continue to build off the success that we had from last year, but then knowing that there's a lot more work that we need to do, special teams wise, to be able to get to where we want to go, and that's obviously to win a world championship.
Loved it. Really enjoyed it. Oh, you know what we should do? Shout out to Chris. What a heck of a coach you got as well on the staff.
Yeah.
I meant to do that earlier, but Coach Gold. And,
I would
and
say
what he
that
means.
I've been finding ways, but he is phenomenal. He is the best coach around I've been a part of. Very fortunate to be, I don't see him as an assistant. It's him and I are linked arm to arm in this thing, and we would not have success, for this special teams unit if it wasn't for him. He's just a phenomenal football coach, and what he does, and his family's, just Class A, Sam and his little guy Ace. So, but very fortunate, he's sticking around, and he just makes us all better.
It's great, man. Great partnership. Let's be here before you know it, brother.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Coach.
Well, Monday, another gem, Ryan Ficken, one of the coaches that I just have so much appreciation for, his longevity in the league and just what he's done with this special teams unit going into year 4.
That's an important part of the team. How many big kicks have we seen Cam Dicker make? How many big punts to pin a team deep have we seen J.K. Scott make? And not to mention him as an evaluator and helping construct this team and who's going to be that 52nd, 53rd guy that can contribute on special teams and then becomes a more integral part, like he was talking about, Adam Thielen of the team. Austin Eckler, here we think about it's the one story we always tell about special teams, and then he goes on to being your starting running back and a guy that's, leading the league in touchdowns over the course of 2 seasons. And a lot of that goes into the special teams coordinator being to evaluate and recognize talent and how they can contribute with limited amounts of snaps not available to them for their particular position, but they can stick on the team because of what, these guys see in them. And it's a wildly underappreciated and underrated part of a football team. And, the special teams coordinator has got to know everybody and be able to tap into all of that. And, 3 phases are 3 phases. It's not 2, it's 3. And special teams is part of it. And since Coach Ficken has arrived, the Chargers have been one of the best in the league at it year in and year out.
Yeah, immediately. All right, guys, there's no off season here at the Bolt. We got OTAs next week. We got minicamp coming up. A very brief break before an early training camp as we get to the Hall of Fame game. So it's going to be a lot of fun here in El Segundo over the next month or so. Take a little break, and then we'll be back. And then more interviews coming up, too, with Coach Roman.
Just waving to Coach Roman who was pulling out a second ago.
Was that him?
No, it was him right before that.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
I don't know who that was. They just waved, so I waved back.
More coaching.
Maybe it was. I saw him walk to his car.
It probably was. We saw Shane Day earlier, too.
Yeah, I was like, I think that was I think it was, yeah. So we're going to get everybody, though. We'll make sure we get everybody on, and we always appreciate talking to them. We know that people enjoy the content.
No question. All right, for Money, I am Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly. We'll see you next week.